Right, so you're here for something a little different, a deep dive, you could say.
Yeah, we're going deep on this one.
We're really focusing in on those crucial first 19 years of George Hatcher's life.
And trying to pull out those really fascinating insights from his autobiography, Pages of Passion, My First 19 Years.
The book itself, just so you know, is a multi-volume autobiography.
Yeah, it's a big one, and available in all sorts of formats, ebook, audiobook, the whole works. But we are zeroing in on that very first volume for this.
Yeah, and we're basically your guides here, helping you really understand the things that shaped him in those early years.
Yeah.
And going straight to the source, right?
Exactly, straight from the horse's mouth, as they say.
Now, just to give you a sense of what we're diving into, we're going to cover his family's background, where they came from.
Yeah.
His childhood on the U.S.-Mexico border, which is already pretty interesting. Right?
Yeah, very unique.
And a huge move that he made as a teenager really changed things for him.
Yeah, totally reshaped his life, that one.
Now, just a heads up, we are going to be touching on some mature themes, just as George Hatcher himself acknowledges in the book.
Right.
So there'll be discussions of real-life situations, some of which some listeners might find a bit sensitive.
Yeah, we just want to be upfront about that.
Also, while these are his actual experiences, it's important to remember that some names and specific details have been changed, obviously, to protect people's privacy.
Of course.
Okay, so George, he kicks things off, not with his own birth in 42, but actually with the pretty incredible story of his dad, George Ozar Curry Sr.
Right.
Imagine a 14-year-old kid leaves Beirut, stows away on a ship to America.
Whoa.
With this one goal in mind, to make his fortune. It's really an amazing example of just self-reliance,
Absolutely.
and how appealing, how much opportunity people saw in America, even back then, even a young teenager like that.
Yeah. I mean, that takes guts. Just the audacity to do something like that at 14. And then he ends up in Detroit. Doesn't speak English, so starts off shining shoes, just trying to get by.
Basic work.
Yeah, just the basics. And that's where things start to shift. He's shining the shoes of this guy, John Apple, who turns out to be this pretty important figure from Arizona.
Yeah, big turning point right there.
A huge turning point.
Yeah, so John Apple, he kind of takes young George Sr. under his wing.
Mentorship.
Yeah, brings him to Douglas, Arizona.
Yeah.
And get this, he learns English and Spanish super fast.
Wow.
And he's got this knack for numbers, real talent there.
Yeah.
So Apple gives him a job in his wholesale grocery warehouse. You can kind of see where this is heading already, right?
Oh, yeah. You can see the trajectory taking shape.
The seeds of his future success. Absolutely.
Exactly. And, to kind of put it in perspective for everyone, he just kept moving forward. By 17, he's got his own distribution warehouse just across the border in Agua Prieta, Mexico, partnering directly with John Apple, too. Talk about moving up in the world.
It's like a classic American dream story.
Yeah. Textbook example.
I mean, from what we read, George Sr. was actually pretty wealthy in those early years. By the time George Jr. is born, though, things had changed a bit financially. But he was still super respected in Douglas, involved in all sorts of local clubs.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thought, right? How even with those financial ups and downs, you can still hold on to that kind of community standing.
Reputation means a lot.
Absolutely.
George Jr., he describes his parents as being really quite different. Physically, his dad was tall, fair skin, light eyes, that kind of look.
Right.
Whereas his mom was petite, dark hair, dark eyes, reflecting her Mexican heritage, although her parents were actually Spanish immigrants.
Oh, interesting. So another layer there.
Yeah. And George himself, he inherited this kind of mix, right? He describes himself as having, Latin looks, but with those hazel eyes, just like his dad. So even in his appearance, you can see this blend of influences, European and Mexican.
Yeah, a real mix of heritages.
And hold on, because the family gets even more interesting. Turns out, George Sr. was married and widowed, not just once, but 4 times before marrying George Jr.'s mom.
Oh, wow. 4 times.
And had, get this, 12 kids from those previous marriages.
You're kidding. Okay, that's a big family.
Huge family. And on top of that, George Jr. had an older brother, Raul, from his mom's side.
So it's like, family reunions must have been...
Oh, I can't even imagine.
A lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
A real mix of personalities, you'd think.
Oh, absolutely. So George's earliest memories are actually living in the back rooms of his parents' curio and flower shop.
Okay.
In Agua Prieta, Mexico, right across the border. And this is the best part. Their shop was right next door to he calls it a nudie bar.
Oh, my.
And it was famous, or maybe infamous, for its turtle meat cocktails.
Turtle meat cocktails.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah, you just get such a sense of just a really unique environment for a little kid to grow up in, right?
Yeah, definitely not your average childhood.
No, not at all. And, because of the flower shop, little George ended up being the ring bearer in a ton of weddings.
Oh,
He even thinks he might have ridden turtles, but that one's a bit fuzzy.
that would be a sight to see.
I know, right?
But these are the details that really stick with you. They bring that time and place to life.
Oh, totally. Now, it wasn't all roses, He does talk about frequent arguments between his parents, lots of tension over finances, with his dad's businesses kind of, going up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad also accused his mom of flirting. A lot.
Sounds a bit rocky.
Yeah, kind of a recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
But despite all that, George says he always felt loved by both of them.
That's good. It's good to have that solid foundation.
It is.
Those arguments highlight those real life stresses that families deal with.
Real life, yeah.
But that underlying love is so important.
Absolutely. Okay, so around age 5, big change happens. They move into this brand new cinder block house in Douglas, Arizona. And you can tell this house really meant something to George. He describes it so fondly, the copper-colored asbestos roof that his dad was so proud of. Fruit trees in the yard. Mm-hmm. He even had his own little playhouse that he turned into a chemistry lab, of all things.
That's so cute.
I know. And he kept pigeons, too. It sounds like, for him, that house represented stability, that sense of home.
Yeah, a real sense of place. And for a young kid, that's huge.
Totally.
Moving away from that shop, living next to that bar, it kind of feels like they were trying to establish a more, typical suburban life.
Yeah, kind of settled down a bit.
At least for a while.
Exactly. And during this time, his dad, always the entrepreneur, right?
Mm.
He starts investing in local farmers, growing lettuce, garlic, even those tiny but super hot chiltepin peppers.
I've heard those are killer.
Yeah, like fire.
Mm.
And he also got into adapting commercial equipment, like store scales and cash registers for the Mexican market. It was interesting, but from what we gather, it didn't make him super rich again. But it did show, that resilience, always looking for new opportunities.
It's kind of inspiring, like he could have just been defeated after those earlier financial setbacks.
Right.
But he didn't give up.
Didn't give up at all.
Just kept trying new things, using his connections, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit.
Absolutely. But, as often happens, life threw them another curveball. Around age 8, the money troubles came back. They had to rent out the beloved house, move into a small apartment.
Oh, that's tough.
George actually talks about how crushed he was, especially that Christmas Eve when all he got was one candy bar.
Ouch.
It's such a little detail, but it speaks volumes about, how kids feel that financial insecurity so sharply.
It's a real turning point for him, don't you think?
Yeah, like a loss of innocence almost.
Yeah, he realizes things aren't always stable,
Exactly. But even then, even at 8, he gets this idea. He loads up a wagon with canned goods his dad had gotten and starts going door to door selling them.
Trying to help out. That's really impressive at that age.
Yeah, really entrepreneurial, even then.
It's in his blood.
It is. Luckily, around age 9, they were able to move back to the house. But you can tell that experience really shook him.
Of course, yeah.
He gets a paper route, starts saving every penny, terrified of having to move again.
You can't blame him, right? That fear of instability sticks with you.
Absolutely.
Oh.
He also joins the Cub Scouts and then the Boy Scouts, buys his own uniform with the money he'd earned.
Good for him.
And, he had friends, girlfriends, even rode mules out in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't all about work and worry.
It's important, right, to have those normal kid experiences even when there are challenges.
Totally. I love this one story he tells. He's 9 years old, and he has his first kiss with his friend's older sister, Valida, in a dark garage.
Yeah, the awkward first kiss stories.
I know, right? But then he feels so guilty about it, he goes and secretly asks for forgiveness in church.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so that childhood innocence, figuring things out.
Yeah, you start to understand those social boundaries, morality, all that.
Totally. But things are never simple for long, are they?
Sadly not.
At age 10, his mom decides she wants a divorce. So the house is sold, she gets $1,000, and she and George, they board a Greyhound bus, headed for Los Angeles.
Wow. So leaving his dad behind, everything he knows, huge shift. It's like his whole world just gets turned upside down.
Yeah, and he's only 10.
Talk about a defining moment.
Absolutely. In L.A., It's a total culture shock. He talks about this constant fog, the massive size of the city.
It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Especially coming from a smaller town.
Totally. And they basically knew no one, except they were told not to contact a stepbrother who lived there. So suddenly, 10-year-old George is thrust into this new role, having to help his mom out constantly because her English wasn't great.
Oh, so he's basically translating, navigating everything for her.
Yeah, heavy stuff for a kid.
It's a lot to put on someone so young.
It is. They found this little room at the Hotel Chandler for $15 a week. Small, basic, but his mom kept it clean, you know.
Trying to make it a home.
Exactly. And of course, the first thing they had to do was find her a job. But her nursing background, totally useless in LA without proper U.S. credentials.
That's rough. You come with all this experience.
And you have to start from scratch.
Yeah, those qualifications don't always transfer over easily.
Not at all. But after days of searching, facing rejection after rejection, his mom remembers she's got these sewing skills.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, so George, he's looking through the classifieds, finds her a job at a factory, making minimum wage, $1 an hour. It's a huge change. But George, he sees how hard she's working, and he really admires her strength.
That's powerful, you know. It's about more than just the money. It's that example of resilience.
Oh, totally. So while she's working, George, he spends his time at the hotel lobby, hanging out with the older residents, and that's where he meets Leonard Hatcher, an elevator repairman who's staying at the hotel just because it's convenient for work.
It's amazing how these chance encounters can shape your life, you know.
Oh, totally. And George, he's got this idea. He's observed Leonard, sees he's a good guy, and he actually orchestrates this meeting between Leonard and his mom.
Wait, he set them up?
He did.
That's incredible.
I know, right? And get this, just a month later, they get married.
Wow. Whirlwind romance.
Totally. I think, you know, maybe subconsciously he was looking for stability, for a father figure.
Makes sense, especially with everything he'd been through.
Right. So now they're a family, they need a new place, and George, always helpful, he's poring over the classifieds again.
Always looking for a solution.
They end up in this one-bedroom apartment across from Hollenbeck Park in Boyle Heights, East LA.
Okay, and how's that neighborhood?
From what we read, it was a bit rougher than they'd expected.
Yeah.
George ends up sleeping on a rollaway bed in the dining room.
Not ideal.
Oh.
So he goes from this house with the yard and the pigeons to, you know, sharing a one-bedroom apartment.
Tough adjustment.
Definitely.
And then, starting at Breed Street Elementary, he gets this instant introduction to gang culture. He meets the gang leader, this tough kid called Pi, and his crew, right off the bat.
Oh, boy.
Pi even asks him straight up, "You gringo or Chicano?"
Whoa.
And then says flat out, "You got to be in a gang around here, man, or you're dead." It's like, welcome to the neighborhood.
Not exactly welcoming.
No, not really. But George, he's quick on his feet. Instead of, you know, freaking out or trying to fight back, he just says, "Hey, I live close by. I can help you with your homework if you want."
Seriously, he played the homework card.
He did. And surprisingly, Pi goes for it. So George becomes this unlikely tutor for these tough gang members.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Talk about thinking outside the box.
And it works. He earns this neutral status, even becomes friends with Pi, all without actually joining the gang.
That's some serious social maneuvering.
It really is. But despite all that, he never loses that entrepreneurial spirit. He cleans their driveway, washes cars for people in the building, takes over the trash duties, even gets another paper route.
He's a hustler, that's for sure.
He is. And then he goes to Pi with this idea for a lawn mowing business.
Oh, that's great.
I know. But the negotiation, it's hilarious. George is like, "I'll give you 30%, and Pi has no clue what he's talking about.
Oh, that's so funny.
They eventually figure it out, though, and start making pretty good money. And George, he even uses his connection with Mr. Holmberg, the banker he met at the hotel, to help his stepfather Leonard get a car loan.
So he's keeping up those relationships, using them to help his family.
He's really smart about it.
That's a great skill to have.
It is.
You know, being able to connect with people from all walks of life. Bankers, gang leaders, you name it.
Totally. Now, when he starts Holmbeck Junior High, there's more schoolwork, less time for the lawn mowing business. He and Pi kind of drift apart a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Priorities change.
But they stay friends. And George, he keeps that neutral status with the gangs. He even manages to broker this truce between two rival gang leaders, Hank and Pi, convinces them to settle things with a fist fight instead of weapons.
Whoa. Wait, he got in the middle of that. That's brave.
Super brave. And I think it earned him a lot of respect.
Yeah, definitely.
It's at Hollenbeck that he meets Patty Nisei, a Japanese girl in his class.
Okay.
They start passing notes, eating lunch together, eventually studying at her house in City Terrace. Her mom, Thelma, sounds lovely, really welcoming.
Oh, that's sweet.
And this is where things get, romantic for George.
First love.
Yeah. They join student government together. He becomes the parliamentarian. They both do drama club. They're going to dances, practicing lines for plays, just being a typical teenage couple with all the, breakups and makeups and everything.
Well, those are the relationships you never forget.
They shape you.
They do.
And over time, they become more intimate, more than just holding hands. And he describes their first sexual experience as being kind of, unplanned, without protection.
Yeah, young and in love.
Spontaneous.
Making those big life decisions without really thinking them through sometimes.
Definitely.
Sounds like by the time he finishes junior high, he's really lived a whole lifetime already.
He has. I mean, he dealt with poverty, a major move, family upheaval, even navigating the world of gangs. He learned to be resourceful, stay neutral, and he even found first love. It's quite the foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So it makes you think, doesn't it? How did all those experiences, that displacement, the instability, the constant need to adapt, how did it all shape him? What lasting impact did it have on his outlook and the choices he made later on? What about the themes in those later volumes of his autobiography? It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, it really makes you want to keep reading.
It does.
See how it all played out.
Yeah, definitely food for thought.